It was a quiet morning at the airport, the kind where travelers shuffle between gates with sleepy eyes and rolling suitcases, more concerned about flight delays and coffee than anything else. But among the crowd that day walked a man unlike the others. He was tall, rigid in his posture, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, his uniform perfectly pressed, and on his shoulder rested a simple yet sacred responsibility, escorting the remains of a fallen soldier back home. This man was a tomb guard from Arlington National Cemetery, one of the few who had earned the honor of guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. Every step he took was precise, measured, almost ceremonial, as though even in this crowded terminal he was performing his silent duty of respect. But as he approached the security checkpoint, something unusual happened. The airport staff, unaware of who he was and what he carried, stopped him abruptly. They glanced at the flag-draped transfer case being wheeled with him and at the military orders he presented, but their tone was cold, mechanical, as though this moment was no different than scanning another oversized suitcase. One attendant raised a hand, insisting the escort would need to wait, questioning paperwork, questioning why a ceremonial guard was traveling this way. The tomb guard's jaw tightened. He had trained for years never to show emotion while standing watch at the tomb, never to flinch in the face of storms, disrespect, or distraction, but here, in this terminal buzzing with chatter and announcements, his silence carried weight heavier than any words. Travelers began to pause, sensing the tension, noticing the sharp contrast between a man embodying centuries of honor and staff members treating the moment as an inconvenience. And in that silence, something began to stir in the air, like a story unfolding that no one had expected to witness. The staff members, perhaps jaded by countless days of routine, failed to understand that this was no ordinary flight, no ordinary escort. The tomb guard stood like an immovable pillar, clutching the orders in his gloved hand, his gaze steady but unyielding. Behind him, the transfer case, draped with the stars and stripes, seemed to glow beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the terminal, commanding reverence in a place usually filled with hurried footsteps. One of the employees tapped a pen against the counter impatiently, asking curtly, "Sir, we need to verify this again. You'll have to wait over there until clearance comes through." For a brief second, murmurs rippled through the surrounding crowd. A woman holding her child whispered to her husband, "That's a soldier, and that flag." A teenage boy lowered his headphones, realizing this wasn't another scene of airport frustration but something profoundly different. The tomb guard remained motionless, his back straight, his boots aligned in perfect position, his silence answering more than his voice ever could. He was trained not to react, but within him burned a quiet storm, not anger for himself, but sorrow that the one he was escorting, a brother in arms who had given everything, was being treated as though his sacrifice required paperwork approval. Slowly, passengers began putting away their phones, removing hats, standing straighter. The atmosphere shifted. People who had rushed moments earlier now stopped entirely, sensing that they were standing in the presence of something sacred, even if airport policy hadn't yet caught up. And still, the staff looked unconvinced, their skepticism holding the moment hostage, unaware that the eyes of dozens were now fixed on them, silently asking, "Do you not see what stands before you?" Then, in a voice low but firm, the tomb guard finally spoke, breaking the silence that had hung heavy in the air. "This soldier," he said, his words deliberate, "is not luggage. He is not freight. He is a son, a brother, a patriot who gave his life. I am his escort, and I will not abandon my post." The sharpness in his tone startled the attendants, who were used to rushed apologies or frustrated sighs from passengers, but never this solemn declaration of duty. A hush fell over the crowd. Even the nearby TSA officers, who had been monitoring the line, turned their attention fully to the exchange. The employee at the desk shifted uncomfortably, mumbling something about protocol, but his voice faltered as he glanced around and realized every set of eyes in the terminal was locked on him. Children stopped fidgeting, parents held them close, and veterans in the crowd, their hats and jackets marked with old unit patches, stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder as though forming an unspoken line of defense behind the tomb guard. One elderly man with trembling hands reached up and removed his cap, revealing thinning gray hair, and stood silently at attention, tears brimming in his eyes. The tomb guard did not move, his expression carved from stone, but within him the weight of the moment pressed heavier than the rifle he once carried at Arlington. He had stood watch through storms, through blistering heat and icy nights, but this battle of dignity against indifference, felt more urgent than any guard change on the marble plaza. He was not here to demand recognition for himself, he was here to ensure that the one draped in the flag would be honored with every step of the journey home. Suddenly, as if a tide had turned, a voice rang out from the crowd. "Let him through." It came from a man in uniform, a commercial pilot who had stepped out of the boarding gate nearby. His wings gleamed on his chest, and his face bore the seriousness of someone who understood sacrifice. "That soldier rides with us today. And his escort will not be delayed." The authority in his words cut through the tension like a blade. The staff members hesitated, their earlier confidence evaporating under the growing weight of public silence and collective respect. Passengers who had been strangers moments earlier now stood unified, their presence forming an invisible honor guard around the tomb guard in the flag-draped case. One by one, hats came off. Heads bowed. Even the children, sensing the gravity, grew still. The tomb guard lowered his chin slightly, acknowledging the shift without betraying emotion, and stepped forward once more, his boots echoing softly against the terminal floor. The staff, realizing the futility of resistance, moved aside reluctantly. But the damage of their initial refusal lingered in the air, serving as a stark reminder of how easily honor can be overshadowed by routine. Yet, in that same moment, the reaction of ordinary people, mothers, fathers, veterans, travelers of every kind, restored what was nearly lost. The tomb guard pressed on, wheeling the fallen soldier toward the gate with the precision of a march practiced countless times at Arlington, each step declaring silently, "This man will not be forgotten." As the procession continued, something remarkable unfolded. Passengers waiting at other gates rose to their feet, setting aside coffee cups and newspapers, forming an unplanned corridor of respect through which the tomb guard and his sacred duty passed. No one instructed them, no announcement directed it. It was instinct, a deeply human response to witnessing sacrifice personified before their eyes. The pilot who had spoken earlier walked alongside, ensuring the path remained clear. A veteran in a wheelchair saluted as best he could, his frail arm trembling but unwavering in devotion. And, though the airport was still filled with the hum of engines and distant announcements, in this section of the terminal there was silence, a silence more profound than words. The tomb guard, unyielding and disciplined, never broke stride. His duty was clear, his mission unchanged, to deliver this fallen soldier home with every ounce of honor intact. Yet those who watched would never forget this moment. For them, it was not just a scene in an airport, it was a reminder of the cost of freedom, the weight of duty, and the unbreakable chain of respect binding one generation of soldiers to the next. What began as a cold interruption by indifferent staff had transformed into a living testament of unity, where strangers became witnesses, and witnesses became part of a sacred ritual. And as the tomb guard guided the flag-draped case toward its final journey home, the people knew they had seen something rare, not just the escort of a hero, but the embodiment of honor itself, standing tall even when challenged, moving forward until the mission was complete.